Good evening, everyone, or good morning and afternoon, whatever the time is for you at the time of watching this, and welcome back to Dynasty Dumbies, your home for the latest in college football news and action. We're your hosts, Tony and Hunter, and we're going to jump right into our preview for this upcoming weekend.
To get things started, we're going to take a look at the new Heisman favorites. There's three clear favorites ahead of the pack: Carson Beck, Ty Simpson, and Fernando Mendoza, the quarterbacks for Miami, Bama, and Indiana. Carson Beck and Ty Simpson are both sitting at plus 350. So they're the new number ones after Dante Moore fell after the Indiana loss. He fell to plus 1700, which was a pretty hard fall off in my opinion.
It's kind of I don't know. I don't know if I really like them, him dropping that hard because of one game. Like I understand like it's a game they probably expected Oregon to win and it was a real statement game for them, but for him to drop that far still kind of blows my mind cuz I don't think your season accolades and accomplishments get wiped away in one game, but I still think that could be a sneaky one to watch for in him. I think he definitely bounces back, but I love that we are 7 weeks in and we still don't have like a clear this dude's running away with it sort of person. Like I love it because it shows that someone could just come in and have a monster second half of the season and just surprise everybody.
Exactly. There clearly has been a lot of shift across the whole board throughout the whole season, and this is the furthest ahead grouping we've seen, which I don't expect it to stay consistent. I think next week it'll be another new top three potentially. Mendoza jumps up here, though, obviously after that big win against Oregon. So I really think that it's not just these top three that have a shot, but like you said, Dante Moore, I think, is still a good play. Jeremiah Smith and Julian Sayin are also sitting inside this top six. So a lot of solid players here that really, I think, there's so much football left to play. It could go anyway.
It's so hard to tell with the Heisman. I mean, like I just said, where we have plenty of football left, and someone could just come in and have a monster season and just take it away, run away with it, or even one of the favorites right now, like Carson Beck or a Ty Simpson, could just take it and run with it and never look back, sort of thing. So let's definitely keep our eye on this because it's going to change week by week with how some of these games are going to pan out, and if we see how they treated Dante Moore after losing one game, we'll have to see how they treat someone else if they end up losing another game.
It's so hard to tell how the odds will change throughout. So I agree with you. There's still so much left to see how it plays out. So right now, though, if you're a betting man, these are your favorites. But taking a look at our next topic here, looking at all these new head coaching openings, going into next year, it's interesting to see who might have the best opening, the best spot for a coach to go to. So we're going to go through our top rankings of these teams here of which openings we think are the best spots to land right now if you're a head coach.
With 8 jobs now being open, it's time to like you said, decide which ones do we think are the best and which ones are kind of like I don't know if I would want to go to this one, sort of thing. But there's, like I said, with there being 8 openings now, about halfway through the season, or coming up on the halfway point, which, is a lot more than I would have thought probably. But I guess some of these teams thought enough was enough and decided they needed to, get the fresh start. But to start off, of course, I put Penn State number 1. I thought that, for me, I'm going kind of based off of brand here because I don't know the inner workings of, how the schools will do it and whatnot. But it's hard to beat that Penn State brand, in my opinion, being in that Big Ten where a lot of the money's flowing and they're, blue blood football. When you think of college football, you think of Penn State and, of course, their whiteout games and whatnot. It's just hard to deny that this is just a marquee spot. And I have Tech at second. I considered putting them at number 1. I think their brand alone is just massive. They have the history, they have the fan base. They have the stadium, in my opinion. I think Lane's a nice stadium. And I wouldn't be surprised if they have the money. And I'm pretty sure they do. So I think this is going to be, you could almost put a 1A, 1B with Penn State and Tech for me. But I think that's another one where you could see a big name, possibly a James Franklin, end up there. You never know. And then I put Arkansas at 3. It's just hard to beat that SEC money. SEC, everyone wants to say that they're the best, the biggest, and the baddest. So if they can land someone pretty decent, you never know. I did put UCLA at 4. I think it is still a pretty decent spot to go. Of course, they are in the Big Ten, and we have seen, especially in these past couple weeks, that they are capable. Maybe you could say that they're the ones that completely derailed the Penn State season. So, there is very much potential there, I think, and I think it could end up being a pretty decent program with the right person leading the troops. Oklahoma State, of course, I put there at 5 with Oregon State right below them at 6. I thought those two could be pretty interchangeable. I almost wanted to put Oregon State just a little higher purely because they are getting, the newly formed Pac-12, which I think could end up doing some pretty good for them and that conference as a whole. So I think it could end up turning into a pretty decent conference over there. I did put UAB above Stanford. Purely for the American bias. I think UAB, albeit not a great program, but they're in a pretty decent conference that seems to be on the rise with each given week. So, with the right person, they could find themselves competitive in a conference that's in the playoff talk just about every single year. And then Stanford, being Stanford, not really known for their football. Not a bad school, in my opinion. They're obviously a bunch of smarties over there, so maybe they can find someone smart enough to lead the program.
I think it's important to note Stanford's head coach right now is an interim Frank Reich, so they hired their head coach actually in the offseason. So that's why they're still here, even though they didn't fire anyone during the season. It happened before the season started. But looking here at my list, Penn State, I think, is undeniably the most lucrative and best resourced option. I'm not going to sit here and deny that Penn State is not realistically the most prestigious, most whatever. There's no doubt about it Penn State compared to everyone else on this list. However, I do think Virginia Tech is a more interesting spot for a coach, and for that, I'm having it in my number 1 spot. Virginia Tech, if you did not know, check out one of our previous episodes, but we talk a little bit about how they had a new $229 million athletic budget infusion, which is going to help their program become their athletic departments become one of the most wealthy within the ACC, which I think is huge for it. Additionally, Virginia Tech no doubt has the fan base. As someone who's from Virginia, I'm a JMU fan, but I know I would be sitting here as a liar if I tried to say Tech didn't have the support. They show up no matter what. They have great fans, so they will buy in and show up. You can rely on the fan support to come to games if you keep winning. And honestly, I think James Franklin getting fired from Penn State helps them even because he was such a good recruiter within the state of Virginia. It was hard for homegrown talent to stay within the state. That's gone now. So there's a huge opportunity, I think, for these Virginia schools to take advantage of that. So because of all of this, I think Tech is actually the most interesting and most intriguing in my opinion. So I'm putting them at number 1. Like I said, Penn State is Penn State. There's no doubt that is a great landing spot. If you're a coach, you're going to have huge backing, but you're going to have a lot of pressure too because James Franklin won a lot, and I think a lot of programs on this list besides Penn State would be happy with what James Franklin provided Penn State. So can they get someone better is the question. Mm-hmm. Arkansas, I had at 3-2. I really debated them and Oklahoma State. I think they're really interchangeable. Arkansas, I did put above because of the media's love for the SEC. They're going to be in a more advantageous position within their conference because of the bias towards the SEC. So I do think they're a better spot, but Oklahoma State is a really good spot as well within the Big 12. They're one of the bigger brands, I think. Then UCLA I had at 5, and I felt the same way with UCLA and Oregon State. I wanted to lean Oregon State because of what you said with the new Pac-12 and having that regionality, which will be good for it and is the reason why they've kind of been put in this really tough spot so far. But I think UCLA is a little bit better. They're going to have the money to move things. Oregon State has had some bad luck. So I'm going to roll with UCLA. And then Stanford I had here at 7. I don't have much to say about Stanford, to be honest. If they can commit, we've seen teams at Stanford be good, but I think in this new age it's going to be tough for them to be consistent. Then UAB, maybe I could have put UAB at 7, but I just don't think they're one of the more intriguing options out of the American. So I have them here at last, but Virginia Tech for me, though, I think is the most interesting.
I mean, I might have to agree with you a little bit on it with it being the most interesting job opening, because we know that, especially as Virginia boys, we've known that lately with Virginia Tech has just been bad. I mean, we grew up with Virginia Tech, kind of running things in the state for.
I mean, they won 10 games for how many seasons in a row?
Yeah, I mean, albeit for the better part of our childhood, it was nothing but Virginia Tech, Virginia Tech, Virginia Tech, and then now it seems like the state has caught up, with JMU, with UVA every once in a while, especially this year, and like you could even say ODU, with these other teams catching up. So it's definitely a job I would say is possibly the most interesting, but I just had to throw Penn State at 1 purely because of that brand.
I totally get that.
Yeah, and they, being a, you could argue top 3 team in the Big Ten, albeit Indiana is probably taking that spot right now. But, like I said, when you think of college football and, the history of it, most of the time you're going to throw Penn State in there. So I know I respect it. I like it. I like you putting Tech at 1 because I think it's definitely going to be a fun one to have. So especially like you said, we had mentioned before in a previous episode with that big budget coming through.
Yeah.
Every coach is going to love to see that in today's day and age. So it's going to be one to watch in this offseason for sure. And possibly a couple other teams maybe joining these lists soon here with we've been harking it almost all season. Our boy Billy Napier. Possibly getting the boot sooner rather than later. So we'll have to see that one.
Lots of rumors swirling about him right now of people saying that no matter what happens this weekend that he is going to be out at Florida. Obviously, these are just rumors. These are allegedly things that could be happening. So we'll see what happens here. But we'll be looking at this closely. Florida, if they landed on this, would be one of the top spots without a doubt. They clearly have the resources. So more to come on Billy Napier's situation as things develop.
We'll have to wait and see on that one because I think if Florida ends up, on this list, I'd probably say they're going to go ahead and jump right up to 1 for me. A big SEC team like that, and it being Florida, getting the chance to coach in the swamp would be something that a lot of people would probably want to do, and they want to be the one known for getting Florida back to the way it was. So we'll have to keep an eye out for them. But another topic we're going to jump into here is the controversy around College Game Day's new era, per se, of how they kind of run things and how most college fans not a fan of it. It's just not great lately, especially these past couple years, I would say, where they keep going to almost the same teams just about every other week, and they're really harking on these the highest ranked matchups instead of trying to showcase more of the sport as a whole, where, for this weekend specifically, where of course they're going to Ole Miss against Georgia, which understandably big game, but when you have another game like the Utah BYU game in the Holy War, that just screams game day. I mean, you had said it perfectly in one of our group chats. Could you imagine Pat McAfee going to game day when they're covering the Holy War? It would be electric television.
Would be great. I will say the people on game day, they do a great job. The show is entertaining. what we're upset about is their location choice because,
Yes. Yeah.
McAfee at BYU, Utah would be awesome. Stuff like that. Like you said, it's not about the highest ranked matchups, but it's about showing off the entire sport, and that means these rivalries. That means these smaller schools. I know I have the personal experience with game day coming to JMU in 2023 as one of the last smaller schools they've gone to, and 26,000 people came to game day. The Jonas Brothers played. It was one of the most electric game day shows ever that they all said was amazing. Pat McAfee was like, I totally disrespected JMU because I thought that they were a small school and they wouldn't show out. And clearly smaller schools can, and these other schools deserve a shot to showcase the whole sport. And the Holy War is a perfect example of that, where they haven't gone to a Big 12 game since 2023 either. This year, they've only gone to one non-SEC or Big 10 school, and that was week 4 when they went to Miami, who was playing Florida. It wasn't even an ACC matchup. It was an SEC team going to Miami. So it's just, at this point, I want to just rename it the SEC Game Day Show then, because if that's what you're going to do, then just own up to it. But they're missing out on these unique storylines because no one in 10 years is going to remember when they went to Ole Miss, Georgia for the 4th time, or Georgia for the 15th time. People remember the time that Game Day went to the last ranked Holy War and it was an insane showing. That's what people talk about, those kinds of game days.
It's something we all want to see, where these, quote unquote smaller schools get their time to shine. And it makes everything so much better. It makes you want to sit down and watch it. I don't want to sit down on Saturday and watch them go to Georgia for the 5th time in, 2 years and constantly hear the same thing basically over and over again and covering the same coach and the same format of players and whatnot, where it's like, I don't care about that. Let me hear about these other storylines, like a ranked Holy War matchup, or even Memphis and USF, like something like that, where you get these games.
Good storyline.
Yeah, where it's a good storyline and it sets up more for the future and even the current, where it's like, you get a game like that, like a Holy War, what we're about to get, where it's like, this is pretty massive for both teams. It puts them, it could put them in the driver's seat for the conference. And it's like, it's not just a rivalry game. It could very much, change their trajectory for the rest of the season. So it's like, stuff like that matters way more, because we all know with these SEC games, they're just going to be like, oh, well, Ole Miss lost to a good Georgia team, so it's like, it's fine, whatever. But whoever loses that Holy War, they're going to be like, well, that's a bad loss, per se. So it's like, we all know what the storylines are going to be. We all know what it's going to turn out to be. And it's just a shame that it has to be attached. And I know it's probably due to their stupid TV rights deal.
$3 billion invested into the SEC.
Yeah, so ESPN is going to protect their brand and make it look as good as they can. And it's a shame to see that, because it's taking away one of the marquee things that college sports has in game day. People love to see game day. They love to see the clips. They love to watch it live. I try my best to wake up and watch it every single weekend. And it's, it's one of those things that's, you're slowly losing the love for it. But we got to give a shout out to Big Noon kickoff over on Fox, who is going to go to the Holy War. They will be on site for it, and they're not forcing them to do a 10 a.m. local kickoff time for it, which I love even more, is that they're going there, they're respecting the time, because it'll be a 7 o'clock game, I believe, Eastern time, so they won't have to do a stupid early kickoff just because Big Noon is there. I got to give them a shout out for that, because they know that's what the people want to see, and it's going to be a great environment for them, and I really hope that they get the good turnout that they're expecting.
I would love to see a good turnout for that. I do think Big Noon deserves some respect. I think Game Day is clearly the premier show, but Big Noon is getting a little bit more respect, I think, because they're going to these other matchups that people want to see, and it's giving other schools an opportunity to show out and show their school spirit. So I think it's great. One of the things I've brought up a couple times is that I think the worst thing to come out of this game day's new era is that I don't think we'll get the Army Navy game every year anymore. They didn't do it last year. That was Lee Corso's thing, and now that he's retired, I don't see them sticking with it because why would they go? Obviously, it's the only game that week, but I think they would rather just save the money on the budget because they don't care about promoting the smaller schools. I mean, and then crazy enough, the Army and Navy. So it's like it's just like that's a game I think everyone would love to see on TV. The Army Navy game, something everyone looks forward to. So it would suck for them to take away their game day every year because I think that is a special tradition.
It's one of the best, if not the best tradition there, where they play every single year, and everybody looks forward to it. It's always entertaining / mediocre
doesn't matter if
football.
The teams are bad or good. If the one team's good, like Navy's looking this year, it just adds to it. But I mean, there's nothing like just turning on Army Navy and watching some 1950s triple option wishbone style offense, and it just gets something right. So
yeah, it's great. It's something that like you said, it doesn't matter if they're both winless throughout, but you sit down and you're going to watch that game, and it's a shame that it seems like it's going to be taken away for the better part of the future here with them not going anymore. And it's hopefully it's somehow some way the ship can be right, and we'll have to see, but I don't see it happening purely because of their SEC money. You're muted.
I agree with you. Unfortunately, that is less than ideal situations for these schools that would love to be part of game day and have that experience.
Yeah, it's something that these schools always want. It's great for the schools, but it is what it is, and we're gonna just have to hopefully move on from it maybe one day. And only way to really get them to listen is to hit their pockets. So we'll have to see if there's a possibility of something like that happening, but probably not because the SEC pays way too much. But speaking of SEC, we're going to jump right into a little reminder on our rankings and why the SEC is overrated. But quickly, of course, again, just going to mention the criteria that we go by in our polls, where head-to-head is a key factor, of course, as always. Weekly results, week by week, will also matter. They all equal the same. We don't care if it was week 1 or week 10. The result is the result. We do not consider hypotheticals whatsoever. If you do, you're a cancer to the sport. And the overall team vibe of a lot of these teams, how they're playing, what they're doing, sort of thing. And then, of course, our group voting style is AP style, where 5 people submit their ballots, and we go from there. So go ahead and lead off with yours.
Taking a look at mine here, Miami did stay at number 1, and I had Indiana jumping up to number 2 after that big win against Oregon. Debated putting them at 1, but ultimately did go with Miami. Then had Alabama jumping up a little bit after their win against Mizzou, who I dropped down to number 18. UVA still sitting inside my top 10 here. I think I'm still surprised with how high I have them here, but I'm sticking with it. I think it's deserved. I have USF and Memphis just outside the top 12. USF actually jumps Memphis after that huge win against North Texas. Nebraska and Cincy sitting here as well with the head-to-heads between them. And then I had USC, Washington, LSU, and Utah all joining the rankings, while UNLV and Navy are still sitting right at the end there, as they're still undefeated and are deserving of a top 25 ranking.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you here. My top 5 identical, obviously, except the only difference is I have Texas A&M and Texas Tech flipped. I finally put Texas Tech in the top 5, deservedly so. Yes, deservedly so. They have destroyed everybody they have ran into, and they look like they are a team to be reckoned with. So I wouldn't be surprised if I start moving them up even more, honestly, with how they're winning these games very convincingly. I did have Ole Miss drop 1 spot purely because of their narrow win this past weekend, and then obviously Oregon dropping 5 spots after dropping a home game against Indiana. Didn't punish them too much, obviously, because that is Indiana's a fantastic team, deservedly so. They are now the number 2. But Oregon's going to have to bounce back here to, try to regain some traction. Alabama entering my top 10 as much as I hate it, but, got to give them respect. They have bounced back very well after a very abysmal showing in week 1. BYU rounding out my top 10 with UVA just outside at 11. Georgia and Tennessee, obviously. I have Memphis ahead of USF because they are undefeated, but I am very close to switching them. USF has very much proven that they are still a team to be reckoned with, like you said, after a massive win against North Texas in a game that we all thought was going to be a lot closer than it was. And USF said, nope, we're on a different tier, and they absolutely are. We'll have to keep an eye out for them. I had Mizzou drop 5 spots to 16. I wasn't going to punish them too hard for losing that game. Kind of was a close game there. Cincinnati being my biggest jump here at 6 different spots, and I think that's purely just because of people that had dropped out. Oklahoma, of course, dropping 10 spots after losing to Texas, and I didn't punish them too hard. We had some conversation about it. If you want to hear a better explanation of why I didn't really want to punish them too hard, go listen to our ranking show where I kind of go into it about my discussion with the Blitz about it. And then, of course, Navy UNLV, I also had said in our ranking show that they are barely hanging on by a thread. They need to prove something to me quick before they start dropping even further and possibly out. And then, of course, LSU, USC, Utah, and my Green Wave join and round out the top 25.
Yeah, I think most interesting thing from my end is that I did drop Oklahoma all the way out. Controversial, but I've clearly shown this season I am not afraid to do that. So that was the case there. They were punished bad for losing to a 2-loss Texas. So that's what happens in my rankings. No one's safe.
Understandable. I totally understand it. Like we said, it's a week-by-week thing. These results do play a key factor. And, losing to a terrible Texas team, in all of our opinions, is not a good look. But, I very much contemplated dropping them even further, but I gave them the tiniest bit of leeway. But nonetheless, it is what it is. But jumping right into the AP in our group rankings here, obviously, like always, the controversy with the AP, it'll never go away. The biggest kind of shock for me is you have a 2-loss team in Notre Dame sitting at 13. Still doesn't make any sense. Very obvious that they're getting put there due to brand.
Exactly.
Albeit we have both mentioned in our ranking show that we do think they are a good team, and they will probably end up back in our rankings at some point. But for right now, there's just not enough room for a 2-loss team. We're getting to the point into the season where you could see some 2 losses jump up into ours, but as of right now, it's just not going to happen.
Not at 13.
Yeah, no way, not even close to 13. They might touch 25 if they're lucky, but they're not going to until, more teams start to drop. And then another point of emphasis for the APs, obviously Texas rejoining at 21. We kind of said that in our previous ranking show where they were getting plenty of votes before when they were unranked. They were just on the cusp, and getting that win against a ranked Oklahoma is always going to jump them back in. Mm-hmm. So I still don't agree with it. Again, another 2-loss team. That was their first P4 win all season. So still don't think they deserve it. And then, of course, the final sort of controversy here is Cincinnati and Nebraska being 24 and 25, even though Nebraska has the head-to-head. I know in our ranking show, you dove deeper into it and kind of explained why it ended up like that. Makes sense, but still kind of just like weird looking thing.
That's what happens when you have a poll created based off of an aggregate. It just happens where, Nebraska and Cincinnati, relative to what reporters are saying, Nebraska is better, but when it just comes to how the aggregate works out, Cincinnati gets a few more points and they're at 24. These teams are on the same level in my opinion. And in our rankings, we have a little bit of shifts up in the top 10 with Indiana jumping up to 2, receiving 1 first-place vote thanks to the doc, and then A&M at 4, Texas Tech finally getting into the top 5, I've been saying this for weeks now that they are worthy of this kind of ranking. Oregon drops down to 7. Georgia Tech, Bama, BYU rounding out that top 10, with BYU facing number 22 Utah. So it'll be a ranked holy war regardless of which poll you're looking at here. With UVA, USF, and Memphis all being right in that middle pack. You have UNLV ranked at 16th because of Will and insisting they're a top 10 team right now. So if you want to hear more on that, go check out the rankings episode. But Cincinnati, LSU, Mizzou, Vandy also right in that range. So I think this week there's going to be a lot of shakeup because of these ranked matchups when you're looking ahead to next week. But without further ado, let's jump into this game preview.
Yeah, so a lot of big games coming up this week, and you could probably say that just about every week now with the new format of things with the playoff and whatnot. Every week is always a big week. But to start off here, we have of course, these rankings that we are saying is reflective of our rankings, our group rankings. We got number 25, Nebraska traveling to Minnesota. Number 8, Georgia Tech facing a sneaky good Duke team that looks like they're kind of having a little sort of bounce back after kind of a shaky start. Number 20, that's typo. Washington getting a nice test here against Michigan at the Big House, which is a big one to watch there.
Yeah, Arizona is then also going to be facing off against Houston on the road. So a matchup between a 2-1 loss Big 12 team. So interesting to see how that one comes and plays out. And then we're going to get a classic Baylor versus TCU matchup at TCU, which is always fun.
Always fun there. A quick bounce back game here. A quick bounce back game here is, of course, Oklahoma after dropping that bad game against Texas, trying to bounce back against South Carolina in a big SEC showdown. That's definitely going to be one to watch because South Carolina can basically play spoils to a lot of these SEC teams now with the run of games that they have going. And then one rivalry game I'd like to point out this week is Georgia State traveling to Georgia Southern.
Kind of a bottom tier rivalry, but still a rivalry. Maybe Georgia Southern would say it's not, but I'm going to say it is because I can. JMU beat both of these teams this year, so I have the bragging rights. Yep. But speaking of JMU, taking a look at our games, JMU and Tulane happening this weekend, JMU is going to be playing at home for homecoming against Old Dominion in the Royal Rivalry. This is going to be an incredible game. I'm going to be on the ground for it, so really excited to be there. The JMU ODU homecoming game is always an impressive showing. Last time JMU set their attendance record for when ODU was there, it was an awesome crowd. Really looking forward to this one. The big question is going to be is if ODU's offense can break JMU's defense, or you could say if JMU's defense can stop ODU's offense. JMU's defense is one of the best in the nation, and ODU's offense has looked really good this year. They were a little down last week against Marshall, but I still think they're very, very good. And then JMU's secondary is going to be the difference maker for this one. Because of that ODU passing attack, they're going to be incredibly important. They have a lot of depth there, but DJ Barksdale, Jacob Thomas, Elijah Culp, these guys are going to be the key. It's going to be a really fun game. From the ODU, like I said, they have a great passing attack with Colton Joseph. But for the Dukes, I want to see them feed Wayne Knight. This dude is a monster out of the backfield. He's great in punt returns, too. Every time he touches the ball, you think something great could happen. They need to keep feeding him because he is really that good.
He is very good. And even in the little amount I've watched JMU, I always see his name pop up just about everywhere when they're mentioned, purely because the dude is just a dog this year. And it's going to be a big one there. But a big one for me this upcoming weekend, of course, is my Green Wave will be hosting our armed forces in Army Saturday at a noon game. The big question here is, can Tulane get revenge for last season's conference title game, where everything was going fine and dandy for the Green Wave until the last 2 games of the season, where they had lost at home to Memphis, and then they had to travel to Army in the conference title game because, G5, someone hosts instead of neutral field, so they traveled to Army to play it, and they just did not look good. They lost. Was not a great game from start to finish, but this is the time where they can kind of right the wrong from last season, find a way to say, like, that was a mess up. We're a different team this year, and let's just keep this going. A big key for me is they got to find the end zone on their possessions. Last week against ECU in the first half, they had 0 touchdowns in the first half, and I believe they had 4 red zone trips where it all ended up with field goals. To me, that is just not recipe for success. You got to convert, I would say, at least 50% in the red zone into touchdowns over field goals to have to be successful, especially when you make those red zone trips. And then another key factor here for me is get the Army offense off the field quick. We all know with the Army and these academies, they're triple option monsters. The Army offense is the second highest average time of possession in the nation with 36 minutes and 13 seconds. So that is a lot of time on the field. Yeah, so the defense is going to have to be ready to have these long drives and hopefully do enough to get the stops to make sure that they can get off the field quickly, and then that the Tulane offense can go onto the field and dictate the time of possession. Because if you get in a battle of time of possession with any of the armed forces, you're going to struggle. So they did it well last year against Navy, who was a great team, but now this year, can they do it against Army and hopefully get a little redemption for last season's conference title game?
It definitely will be a good one. Like you said, time of possession is going to be crucial for you guys. I mean, Army is just, like you said, they are time-guzzling monsters. So, selfishly, I think I kind of want Army to win because that helps JMU a little bit more.
Of course,
but,
yeah.
It's the hater in me. But
go to you.
I knew you were already going to say that regardless. So, I was trying to jump the gun here, but both of these games are going to be fun ones. I will be sharing my insights from Harrisonburg, so make sure you check out our Instagram for some boots on the ground action from that game. But looking ahead to our games to watch, these are the 8 best games of the weekend in our opinion. These are the games that we really think you should be tuning in for, highest stakes, best teams, whatever it might be. Starting off with a Friday matchup, Louisville traveling to number 1 Miami.
This is a huge game and kind of shocks me that it's on a Friday night, honestly. 2 massive teams here with Louisville very much still in the running with getting a number next to their name. In our rankings, they had a number next to their name but dropped out. They're sitting at, I believe, 26 right now. Mm-hmm. They received 11 votes, so just outside of our top 25 here. And then traveling to Miami on a Friday is a huge ask. Both teams are coming off of a bye week, so it's going to come down to which team can lock in quicker. It's coming off of that extra little rest. Is never easy. You think you got some time off sort of thing, kind of rest, relax, recuperate. But then you're right back into it, especially being a Friday night game where, it could put off your schedule even the tiniest bit, even though you had those extra days off. Usually you want to try to get back into a constant rhythm with how things go. But it's going to come down to a lot of different things with this game. It's Louisville, we all know, is a great team with their running back Isaac Brown. Can Miami stop him? Which their defense, Miami's defense, insanely good. We all know about Ruben Bain. Mm-hmm. If Louisville can find a way to put a cap on him, then they could be successful on the ground. But the moment that guy disrupts anything, it's recipe for disaster.
And because of that reason, that's why Louisville's quarterback, Miller Moss, he's going to have to be able to extend plays to get them this win this Friday evening. His ability to, adjust to the pressure is going to be critical. This is a game where I think both teams are really good. I think Miami is clearly in a little bit different league. So I think for them, they don't need to be superheroes. They don't need to do anything flashy, but play sound, disciplined football. And I think they'll come out and have a great performance against Louisville.
I'm kind of with you there. I think from top to bottom that that Miami team just looks like they're on a different level. But a name I'm going to keep an eye out for, especially for Miami, is their receiver Malachi Toney. He tends to make big plays out of nowhere, and usually when he does, it's usually in the end zone as well. So if Miami can find a way to unlock him in the deep ball with Carson Beck, we all know that he's a great quarterback, obviously being a Heisman favorite. If they can connect early on into the game, I think that they could possibly run away with it.
With that being said, are you picking Miami?
I think I'm going to have to. I think I'm going to have to go with the U here. I think they're from top to bottom, they're just on a different level. I think Louisville traveling could hurt them just the tiniest bit, nothing too drastically, but the Florida weather is always different. So I think I'm going to have to go Miami here. I think it's going to be a close game for the most part, and then Miami kind of just trickles away there at the end. If Louisville can, prevent turnovers, and like you had said, if their quarterback can extend the plays and get the much-needed first downs to stay on the field, it could make this game a little closer, but I think Miami kind of just solidifies that they're the top dog in the ACC, and they're a force to be reckoned with.
I think if Louisville had this game at home, I might lean towards the upset, but I agree with you. I'm going to ride with the U as well here. I think they're the better team. I think they're just going to come out and be able to grind away a win and pull away in the second half. But if Louisville can make this a dogfight and get it down to where that fourth quarter is back and forth, don't be surprised if they finish with that last punch.
It would be a fun one to watch there if it came down to that, but it's gonna come down to a whole bunch of things here, especially with both of them coming off the bye. So definitely tune into this one on a Friday night and a great game. But moving on to our next one here, a good old G5 battle here with number 16, believe it or not, UNLV traveling to Boise State Saturday at 3:30. Boise State is a 12.5-point favorite at home, which is crazy to think about.
Clearly Boise State's the bigger brand, and maybe they're getting a little bit of love because of that. 12.5 points seems a bit crazy. Boise State is a good team despite the 2 losses, though. They are a solid team, so I don't think it's something where a loss to Boise is embarrassing, because it's not. But to see them that big of favorites is surprising. UNLV has admittedly been sneaking by this season. They're undefeated, but a play here or there, and all of a sudden they're 3-3, and it's a different kind of season.
Yeah.
But winning is winning. I think a UNLV loss here, though, for the bigger playoff race is a huge, huge detriment. I think if they want to keep pace with the American Conference, their best bet is to finish undefeated, because I think a one-loss UNLV doesn't get by a one-loss AAC champion in that sense. So it's a big game for UNLV and the Mountain West's playoff hopes here.
For sure. I mean, like you had said, it's any loss for them at this point with how their season has gone is going to put them pretty far behind in any talks of playoff race here. But it's going to be tough for them. But look out for their quarterback, Anthony Calandria, former UVA quarterback. He's got 1,403 yards with 10 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. Look out for him. He's been playing some pretty sound football so far this season. He has the ability to make plays with his legs, and which we have seen Boise shown a little weakness in the defending of it. We had seen it obviously week 1 when they played USF, where Byron Brown just ran circles around
Carved
that
them up.
defense. Yeah, so if that's something that UNLV is looking at and looking to expose, they got the quarterback for it because he can absolutely make some plays with his legs. And then obviously, of course, Boise's quarterback Maddox Madsen, who's also playing extremely well this season. Despite the early stumble with them, they're still a good team in my opinion, and they still have every sort of shot to kind of run the table and possibly get into the conference title game.
Boise State definitely has a chance to win the Mountain West, and it starts here with this game against UNLV. This is the moment where they're essentially in the playoffs from here on out to make the Mountain West. So I think it's a big game for them. I think UNLV is going to show up, and it's going to be a good one.
Absolutely. So with all this being said, out of these two teams, who do you got?
I think the matchmakers have this one right. I think Boise State's going to get it done. Maybe not by 13 points like they're saying, but I think the home field advantage is going to be key. I think the Boise fans are going to show out because of UNLV being 6-0. There's been a lot of talk between these two fan bases on social media. I think Boise State's just going to be able to show UNLV that their luck's run out in some of these close games, and Boise's just going to be able to overcome what UNLV throws at them.
You got a lot of good key points there, and I'm sure our good old friend Will is going to be very disappointed in you for picking against his top 10 UNLV. But he's also going to have to be disappointed in me because I'm with you. I think this is where UNLV's magic comes to an end. They've been squeaking by against some quote-unquote lesser teams, which is never a good sign. Those are supposed to be your games where you write things up, and you would think by now something would click for them, and it seems like it's not clicking well, if at all, and with them squeaking by. And I think Boise is just too good of a team. Like you had said, the home field advantage, playing on that Smurf turf, it's a lot harder than it seems like, I would assume. So I think this is where Boise kind of, like you had said, kickstarts the rest of their season, where they try to run the table and get themselves back into that playoff consideration.
Glad to have you on my side. Part of me is mainly doing this to hate on Will. So, UNLV, you can blame that man for your downfall in my book. But I do think you're a good team, so no disrespect. These next two teams are also two good teams. 18 LSU traveling to number 20 Vanderbilt Saturday at noon. Obviously a really big game for the SEC, both in our poll and the AP poll. This is the first time Vandy has been favored in a ranked matchup ever. I believe it's 78 total times they've played as or against a ranked team. Never been favored. First time ever. It's a very slim margin here, but never thought I'd see the day Vanderbilt's a favorite over LSU, who is ranked higher in our poll and the AP poll.
I'm with you. I never thought I'd see the day where Vanderbilt was ranked, let alone a favorite in a ranked matchup. I mean, growing up watching football and seeing Vanderbilt every year, they were kind of like the stepping stone sort of thing, where it was a get right game for a lot of these SEC teams. And we all know the famous clip of the lineman saying Alabama. We all love that. It was great, and then they go and get the brakes kicked off of them. But it's fun seeing Vanderbilt kind of project themselves up here and get them up there. I know our buddy Mr. Sandblitz loves it, seeing as how in our NCAA Dynasty last season he went 0-12 with them. The only person to do that. So it's crazy to see them favorited in a ranked matchup, especially against LSU, who I would think that, the bookkeepers and the public as a whole would think that they are the favorite here purely because they're LSU and they're supposed to have this superior roster of everything. But they haven't really shown it yet this season. Albeit they only have one loss against a good Ole Miss team. but they really haven't had that standout game yet. So this is their chance, in my opinion, to get that standout game and to solidify themselves in the running in the SEC. And then for Vanderbilt, this is also their chance to show that like that Alabama game was a one-off. We can still compete with the big dogs, and we're still very much in the running for the SEC.
You're exactly right. This game means a lot to both teams in that sense. When you're looking at the X's and O's of it, I'm looking for Vanderbilt to get that running game going without relying on Diego Pavia for it. They got to be able to move the ball outside of him. Obviously, he's a great player. And then from an LSU perspective of getting their offense under Garrett Nussmeier at its full power, because we have not seen them click at 100% yet this season, I don't think. This is where this game is really going to be settled. I think this game has a lot on the line where whoever wins this game is going to take a huge step in the SEC, and the other team is going to be falling down a little bit further and playing from behind the rest of the season. But with all that being said, Tony, who do you like in this one?
This is a tough one. This is almost a toss-up here between the two because I think they've both had kind of different seasons here where, Vanderbilt was undefeated before that Alabama game, while LSU, was undefeated up until that Ole Miss game, but wasn't a, stellar undefeated, I should say, kind of barely squeaking by a lot of stuff. This is going to be a hard one, but I think I might have to go LSU here. Just barely. It's going to be close, and I think that it being on the road for LSU will play in some way, shape, or form here. We know that Vanderbilt's going to pack out their stadium for it, but I think they find a way to contain Diego Pavia, kind of limit him on the ground, and then if they can do that and force him to throw the ball, that kind of favors LSU just the tiniest bit with their defense. But I'm going to have to go LS here, and a pretty close one, probably by 7, possibly 10.
I like where your head's at here. Obviously, LSU is the big brother with the bat in this scenario, and Vanderbilt's the little brother who is just learning how to fight back. And clearly, LSU is gonna swing and miss because Vanderbilt's catching that bat and swinging it right back at them this game. I think Vanderbilt's going to get this one done. At home is going to be the key difference maker in this one. Diego Pavia, I think, is going to run wild, and LSU's offense is just going to continue to stutter a little bit this season. And I think we finally get to see LSU for the team they really are, and Vanderbilt show that they deserve that respect that, maybe they haven't deserved over the course of their team history, but right now they definitely do.
I like where your head's at. I really do because it kind of pains me a little to pick LSU, but I think I just need to. It's something just telling me that they kind of get right here, and I'm not going to say that it kind of turns their season around sort of thing, but I think it can definitely help them in the long run, especially. But another game here we're going to jump into that's going to help teams in the long run is number 5 Texas Tech. Traveling to Arizona State Saturday at 4 p.m. It could potentially be Arizona State's third loss of the season and just basically put the nail in the coffin for them into any sort of consideration for just about anything. And obviously with Texas Tech, traveling to the reigning Big 12 champions in Arizona State, it's always tough going on the road, but especially Arizona State, even though they have this is going to be a desperate Arizona State team that I think they're going to be going up against. So they're going to be looking to pull all the strings here to really try to pull out a win here.
I think you're exactly right. I think this is a very dangerous game for Texas Tech. I think Arizona State's a very good team and could easily shock Texas Tech at home here. It's going to be interesting to see what rabbits they pull out of the hat for this one. But for Texas Tech, it's a chance to make a statement versus the defending conference champion and playoff participant. So, can Arizona State slow down Texas Tech's offensive attack? We'll have to see. But some interesting things for this one is Sam Levitt for ASU did not play last week due to a foot injury. It's looking like he's going to trend towards playing, but if not, Jeff Sims is going to get the second straight start. And then with Texas Tech quarterback Ryan Morton, he left last week's victory versus Kansas with a leg injury, and freshman quarterback Will Hammond replaced him, and he would look to start. He's listed as day-to-day, though, so it's looking like he'll probably play. Last week was the third game this season that he had left early due to injury. So, he's got to stay healthy for them to continue to put up these numbers. But if he is not going to play, it's going to be a huge boost for Arizona State against them.
It's going to be massive if he doesn't play, but you could say the same for Texas Tech with Sam Leavitt. I mean, how healthy is he if he does end up playing? And, being a foot injury for someone who's a mobile quarterback, it's pretty big. I mean, is he going to be able to escape the pocket like we know he can? And is he going to be able to extend the plays? I'm not so sure. I mean, depending on what the foot injury was, whether it could have just been a strain or whatnot, or possibly a slight fracture of whatever it could have been. I'm sure it's not comfortable. They're probably going to have to spat the hell out of his leg or his foot and ankle area to prevent any sort of further injury if he does play. So it's definitely something to keep an eye out, because both teams potentially missing their starting quarterback could be huge in that sense. But it's going to come down to, for me especially, which quarterbacks are playing. I mean, if Leavitt's in and Texas Tech's Morton plays, I think it's going to be potentially be a barn burner with just slinging that ball around, moving the ball around a lot, kind of fast-paced, high-action sort of stuff. If we see the backups come in for either team, I think it could potentially slow down the offense just the tiniest bit. Especially with Texas Tech, where they would have a freshman coming in who nothing against them, but it's always hard having that freshman come in and be that leading voice for a team like Texas Tech. But it's going to be a huge one to watch here.
I agree. I think honestly, I do think I would rather have Will Hammond in this situation over Jeff Sims. No disrespect to Sims, but Texas Tech, I think, is a better team overall, so it's just a better situation for a quarterback.
Yeah.
With all that, though, who do you got in this one?
Depending on which quarterback's playing, it's going to change a lot, but I think regardless of which ones play, I'm going to have to go Texas Tech here. They're just too good of a team. As we've all seen, where they are just beating the brakes off of everybody they run into. It doesn't matter who you are. And I think they kind of just slam it shut for Arizona State this season and be like, you guys are the past, we are the present and the future, and get used to it.
I agree. I think Texas Tech is going to walk away with the win here. I'm going to assume both starters play, and I think if both starters play, it's going to be Texas Tech's game. Their offense is too good. However, if they're without Morton and Leavitt plays, I think it could turn into a situation that Arizona State was in against Utah, where Utah just beats the brakes off of them, and it doesn't look good for Texas Tech. But I think I am going to roll with Texas Tech. That's just more of a little bit of an asterisk, just in case something happens.
No, I get it. I would say the same with you. Is if we get a Leavitt's playing but a Morton's not, I could sit here and say like, oh yeah, the starter's playing and it's going to play into their favor. But I think like you had said earlier, Texas Tech, the team as a whole is just built for success no matter which quarterback is playing. So. But moving on here to another game, we got number 15 Tennessee traveling to Tuscaloosa to play Alabama at 7:30. This is a massive SEC matchup.
Obviously, it's Alabama, Tennessee. These two schools really don't like each other, so it's going to be a great game. Obviously, I've been in Tennessee hater all year. I haven't had them ranked, so. If they win this one, they'll be ranked for sure. But if not, Bama just proves me right. So, one way I'm going to eat my words. Another way I just look like a genius. We'll have to see which one unfolds. I think the home field advantage, though, for Bama is going to be a big one here. I think if it's in Tennessee, Tennessee thrives off of that home crowd, but they struggle more on the road in these top SEC matchups.
It's always hard to play on the road, and when you go to a team that is going to be packed full, loud the entire time. But it's something that you could almost say you're kind of used to in the sense of especially with Tennessee with their crowds, where how rowdy they can get. So it's something to definitely keep an eye out for. But like you said, I think it's going to play more towards Alabama's advantage, obviously, because they'll be at home. But it's something to definitely keep an eye out for. We've got to look out here for the quarterbacks, of course. With Tennessee's Joey Aguilar, who is playing very well this season, and barring that loss to Georgia, you could have argued that he was in the Heisman running. And then, of course, one of the Heisman favorites, Ty Simpson. Look for these two guys to see if they can, get their offenses going. Can they sling the ball without causing any mistakes is the big key here. I've always said it, the turnover battle. If you can keep the ball when you're supposed to keep the ball and not give the other team a free possession, that'll absolutely help you. So it's going to come down for me to, of course, the turnover battle per usual.
I think that it is going to come down to that and which one of these quarterbacks protect the ball more. And Ty Simpson has been doing that with only one interception this season. I think he's probably the best quarterback right now. Between him and Carson Beck for the Heisman, I think I would lean towards Ty Simpson right now. He's just playing really freaking well. And nothing against Aguilar. He's been playing great as well. 14 touchdowns, nearly 1,700 yards. The great stat line. So it's going to be a great matchup here. It's one of these top SEC teams is going to start to pull away. Or in my case, Tennessee finally proved that you deserve to be a top SEC team. So,
yeah, it's going to be a good one. I mean, this has shootout written all over it, in my opinion, where they could just absolutely, it could end in the high 40s for each team potentially, with the way that both quarterbacks and both offenses are kind of slinging the ball. Look for Alabama to possibly get ahead a little early, or whichever team can get ahead a little early. Make the other team have to throw the ball more to try and catch up. First possession is very much going to matter in this game, but it's going to be a fun one to watch here. But after all this, in this big SEC matchup, who do you got?
I think this is going to be a great game. But I think I'm going to get proven right. Bama is going to walk away with this one. I think they're going to win by probably 2 scores here. I think they're just going to let Tennessee know that, hey, man, not your year, little bro. And, put them out on the sideline, and they're going to keep rolling. They've looked really great ever since that first loss against FSU. So I think they're going to get it done here. I think Ty Simpson has another really great game, and just makes enough game-winning plays to have Alabama win this one comfortably.
No, I 100% agree with what you're saying. Where it's looking like Alabama is gonna be pretty comfortable in this game, but I'm going Rocky Top.
Ooh,
give me Tennessee to prove that they are still a very much legit team in the SEC. One thing I'm going to point out is Tennessee's run game, I think, could very much decide this game with their rushing offense is 22nd in the nation, and Alabama's rushing defense is 93rd in the nation. So if Tennessee can establish that run and really just kind of shove the rock down their face and just say, like, hey, we're here, we're going to run it, especially on the road where, it could be harder to do that, call that stuff at the line, especially in the pass game. I think, running the ball, establishing a run game could help them very much early on into the game. And I look for them to do that because it seems like their run game has been very successful this season. And I think that can absolutely help set up some play actions and whatnot and help Joey Aguilar find some big plays down to his good receivers. So give me Rocky Top in an upset on the road.
I love the energy there. It would be anytime Bama loses, I'm fine with it, even if it's to Tennessee. So I wouldn't be too upset. Another big game this week. Number 23 USC travels to South Bend Saturday night to take on Notre Dame. The 93rd all-time meeting between these two. Notre Dame's won the last two, but USC looks to be a lot better than they have been the last couple of years, I think.
Absolutely. It's USC, proving that they're still a legit team, and that they are a force to be reckoned with. They slip up against Illinois, but nonetheless they're bouncing back. They're getting the respect that they deserve. They are a good team. They kind of just ran the game on Michigan last week. In a game that we thought was going to be closer, but it ended up not being close at all. Luckily for USC at least, but it's going to be tough to go on the road into South Bend, where Notre Dame, they always know how to put on a show at home and show out. Their defense is always good, and of course Notre Dame, probably their biggest game of the year now heading into it with how their schedule has fallen. This is their chance to showcase themselves again. And against a good team in USC and prove that they belong in the playoff. Of course, we're seeing that the AP is already basically saying that they deserve to be in the playoff, even with 2 losses. But this is their chance to really show that they are still a legit team.
It is really their biggest game of the year. This is the best opponent they have left on their schedule, more than likely. So a chance to get a ranked win would be huge for Notre Dame. Obviously, in the AP poll, Notre Dame is ranked, so this would be a huge win for USC. I think for us, we've admitted Notre Dame's a good team, so it would be a good win regardless for USC. You don't need to be a ranked team to be a good or great team. That's just the way it goes. This one's going to be a really good game in South Bend. Notre Dame just needs to continue to feed Jeremiah Love, while USC's quarterback, Jane Miava, he needs to continue to have a high level of accuracy, 72% completion rate this season. So those are really, this is going to be a big game for the playoff picture for USC getting a marquee win, and Notre Dame having to win out to make the playoff more than likely.
And I think it really helps that for Notre Dame, it's at home, so they're in an environment that they're comfortable with and that they know can probably, make life so much harder for USC. Even though we did see Texas A&M go to South Bend and win, albeit, possibly a little controversial, but at the end of the day, a win is a win, a loss is a loss. There's nothing you can do about it now. You got to move on. So this is Notre Dame's chance to move on and showcase themselves, while for USC, this is also a chance for them to, possibly knock off Notre Dame completely from any sort of playoff aspirations.
It would definitely be a huge loss for Notre Dame. A 3-loss Notre Dame team I don't think is getting in. With that, Tony, who do you want in this one?
Well, there's a difference in who I want and who I'm picking.
Let me say, who are you picking then?
I think I might have to go with the Fighting Irish here. It seems like they have kind of, re-identified themselves and established themselves as a good team here. And it's going to be tough for USC going on the road. Again, coming from West Coast to South Bend, never easy. But I think this is where Notre Dame kind of, puts their foot down and says, we're not done here. I'd look for Jeremiah Love to have a monster game. I mean, if they can keep giving him the rock, they're bound to have success on offense. So I see Notre Dame winning this one. I don't want to say easily, but, probably by a possession, maybe 2.
I agree with you. I'm going to rock with Notre Dame, unfortunately, on this one. Like you said, difference between want and what I think. I'm going with USC as the want. Notre Dame, I agree with you, but not because of any of that stuff you just spewed at me, but for the sole fact that I know how college football black magic works, and Notre Dame's going to win out to make the playoff. And that's the only reason I need to know why they're going to win this game.
Yeah, I see it. Them being an independent, they're going to find a way to put that massive brand in there. It's like you said, it's that college football black magic for Notre Dame, and somehow they're going to find a way to Rudy themselves in there. So we'll have to see how that pans out. But another game here that we're going to jump into, the the quote unquote game of the week for game day, at least in the ESPN, with Ole Miss traveling to Georgia Saturday at 3:30. Of course, College Game Day traveling there with them. Yet again, going to a Georgia game, going to an SEC game. Georgia being pretty big favorites here, which isn't too surprising in my opinion, with the way they've been playing a little bit recently, albeit a little help with the refs and possibly clapping and timeouts and whatnot. But also Ole Miss coming off of a very lackluster game against a team that they thought you would think that they would kind of blow out of the water. So it's gonna be a good one here, and we're gonna be looking to see if Georgia can contain Mr. Trinidad Chambliss himself. Can they make him look uncomfortable and go back to, as Lane Kiffin would say, his D2 plays?
That was a funny quote. Chambliss won a lot with those D2 plays, though. So, be careful what you wish for. This is clearly a top matchup, regardless of how we feel about the bias towards it. These are two of the top teams in our rankings in the AP poll. I think this is going to be a really good one, and it's going to come down to if Ole Miss can limit their mistakes. I think Georgia's going to be the more disciplined team playing at home. I think that's huge for Georgia, getting that home crowd into it. If they can contain Chambliss too, it's going to be a lot easier on their D-line to get pressure and come up the middle to get right in his face as he's trying to deliver the ball.
Absolutely. I mean, we all know, every year with Georgia, it's their defense. How can they find a way to disrupt things, make it about themselves, where their defense is always one to be reckoned with. So it's going to be a tough one for Trinidad and the entire Ole Miss team, being on the road, going to Georgia. It's always tough going on the road in any sort of conference game. It doesn't matter what conference you're in, but they're going to say, of course, since it's the SEC, it's 1,000 times harder. Another hypothetical win for the SEC. But so it's going to be tough for Ole Miss nonetheless. And, if Georgia can dominate, the trenches and make Trinidad uncomfortable and then help themselves on the offensive side of the ball, it could get ugly pretty quickly.
I think you're onto something with that. I think Georgia has a chance to really, kind of similar to that Bama game, show that they are still the top dogs in the SEC. No pun intended there too. Please don't bark at me in the comments. With that being said, though, who do you got in this one?
Again, this difference between want and think. I think I'm going to have to go with Georgia here at home. I think it's just, the writing on the wall, especially with the help that they got last week in their game. Hopefully, maybe the refs find a way to, even the table here and, give Ole Miss a shot here with, a couple helpful calls. But I think Georgia is just going to kind of, again, solidify themselves and say that, like you had said, pun intended, they are the top dogs.
I like where your head's at, but I'm going to go with the Rebels on this one. I think that the football gods are going to take vengeance on Georgia for what they did last week against Auburn. And it's only because they're playing an SEC school that's rated so highly, which in the long term just creates a stronger case for Georgia to have more quality lessons. So it's going to be one of those games where it could really go either way, but I do think Ole Miss is going to come out on top in this one. It's going to be close, though, probably by less than a possession, a field goal, something like that.
And like I said, of course, the want for me is Ole Miss to win, because I would love for Ole Miss to win out, because that just makes the Tulane quality lesson even better. So again, I want Ole Miss to win, but something is just telling me that we are going to keep getting punished by Georgia here, where they're going to find a way to squeak things out and get things going. It's something like you said, the college football black magic. It just feels like that Georgia is the home of that, and they find a way to do what they want to do, even when things are not going their way. But trying to get rid of some black magic here, we're going to head into our matchup of the week, and the probably should be the game of the week across all the boards is the Holy War. Number 22 Utah traveling to number 10 BYU Saturday at 8 o'clock. Again, for us, this is the real game of the week. This is the one that game day should absolutely be there. Shame that they're not, but shout out Big Noon for going there and giving them a platform there. With BYU being the slight underdog, even though it is at home, obviously subject to change at the time of recording, but that's a slight surprise for me.
I definitely am a little surprised by that. It's a near pick'em. BYU is the slight underdog, though, and this is in the first Holy War where both teams are ranked since '09. So this is a big Holy War that's going to be talked about for a while. And I'm talking about this like it's a crusade, and it probably feels like that to both of these fans, where this game is life and death for them over in Utah. So it's going to be a huge matchup with the winner really getting a strong foot position in that Big 12 title race.
Absolutely. I mean, I've seen plenty of fans go back and forth between BYU and Utah about who's better and whatnot, and you love seeing it with these rivalry games. The fans kind of going at it with each other. It just makes it that much better. But one thing that BYU is going to definitely need to do to have any form of success is shut down Devin Dampier. That dude is really good at his position. If he were at a quote-unquote bigger school, you would probably see him in some form of the Heisman race. He's been having a very solid season and is a big reason why Utah is in the position that they are in. But also look for BYU's freshman quarterback that wears number 47.
Love it.
Good old Bear. Great name, by the way. Look for him to get going. He can use, he's great dual threat as well. Was seeing last week in their game against Arizona where he did end up scoring a touchdown in overtime. But it's going to be a battle between the quarterbacks there.
It should be a really great duel. Obviously, Bear is a freshman for BYU, so it's going to be his youthfulness, we can say, against Dampier's more experienced levels of football at the FBS level. But it's going to be great, and something I'm personally looking towards is if the Utes can get Wayshawn Parker going on the ground so that it's not on Dampier, I think that's going to be key. They need to establish another playmaker to take some of the heavy lifting off their quarterback here, and that's going to be a difference maker in this one. This is going to be a game where this crowd, the energy in that stadium is going to be insane, though.
Absolutely. It's going to be great from start to finish. And with all that being said, who are you picking in this Holy War?
This is a tough one. It is a really challenging one for me. I really like both of these teams. I think they're both really good. And ultimately, I think I'm going to have to go with Utah. I'm going to roll with the Utes. I think they're just going to be able to make enough chaos happen defensively to create turnovers and to take the crowd out of it as the game progresses and just hold on to win. It's going to be a really tight game, but I think they're going to get it done.
I like where your head's at. It's going to be tough regardless, but I think that's what's going to give BYU the slight edge in this. I think that home field is going to be pretty massive in this game. Like we had said, being the first ranked Holy War since '09. So give me BYU to take this. I look for them to really kind of, establish themselves here as a legit team in the Big 12. Albeit, Utah, again, still a great team. This is going to hurt them quite a bit if they were to lose this going with two conference losses, being to the top two teams. I mean, nothing to be ashamed about, but it could really put some hurt on their chances here. But I like BYU in this. I think this is their chance to showcase themselves, that they are definitely a top team in the Big 12 and are going to be looking to run the table with Texas Tech there. I look for them to, like you had said, where Dampier, can he get some help from his running backs? I think that BYU has that chance to establish themselves on the ground. They can control the clock themselves. and kind of just take all the energy they can out of Utah with the help of their crowd, which I think is going to play a major key factor in here. So give me BYU to take this holy war.
You're almost convincing me to swap my pick, but I'm a roll with what my gut said here. I cannot disagree with you, except the fact that I do, and I think Utah's going to win. So it's going to be a great game, though. This is the game that you should definitely tune into Saturday night, though. It's going to be a great game. Two schools that have deep levels of animosity towards each other.
Yeah, it's always going to be a fun one. We love our rivalry games, especially when they're ranked. It just makes all that the stakes are even higher for this one. So again, a shame College Games Day is not there, but that's their loss. So sucks for them. They can go have fun with their boring SEC game while we get a fun Holy War at BYU. So, but let us know what you guys think. What games are you looking forward to this weekend? Who do you think is going to come out on top in all of these games? Feel free to follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Dynasty Dumbies. That's DUMBIES. Feel free to follow our personal Twitter accounts as well at Hunter_Shaw5 and at CronyTony20. And we will see you all after this electric weekend for our ranking show.
See you guys.